What happens when a CEO goes undercover in his own restaurant and ends up getting blamed in front of the entire staff for something he didn't do? Isaac Langston had inherited the 19-location diner chain from his father 4 years ago. It was a classic American comfort food spot, known for greasy burgers, fast service, and bottomless coffee. Business had been good until recently. Online reviews started dipping. Turnover grew at a couple of locations. Complaints about rude service and slow food started piling up, especially from location 14 in Mesa, Arizona. Isaac had never personally stepped foot in that store. Most of the original staff had turned over. The current general manager, according to reports, was a guy named Damon who'd transferred over from another branch 2 years ago. Isaac had never met him. He decided to go down there himself. He didn't want another filtered report from a district manager. He wanted the truth. So he changed his look, shaved the beard, wore thick glasses, buzzed his hair, and added a little weight vest under his shirt to shift his posture. He introduced himself to the staff as Ian, a new trainee sent in from corporate to learn the ropes. Since most of the staff had never met him and corporate often shuffled people around, no one blinked. The moment he walked in, the vibe felt wrong. Damon, the general manager, barely looked up from his phone when Isaac arrived. "Oh, you're the new temp." "You're late," Damon said, tossing him a stained apron. "Clock in and stay out of the way." Isaac nodded and followed one of the servers, a young woman named Riley West, to the back. "Don't mind him," Riley whispered. "He's only nice when someone's watching." Over the next few hours, Isaac quietly learned the register system, bussed tables, and helped plate food. He noticed Riley coaching him without judgment, gently correcting him when he made mistakes. She was fast, polite to every customer, and handled a screaming toddler with the patience of a saint. Isaac watched her skip her break twice to cover for a hostess who never showed. By the afternoon, he started asking questions. "Is it always this short-staffed?" Isaac asked as he wiped down counter space. Riley nodded. "Yeah, Damon keeps cutting hours, says labor's too high, but then he yells at us when things fall behind." Isaac noticed something else. Damon spent most of the day in the office. When he did walk the floor, it was to bark orders or flirt with the younger staff. At one point, an older cook named Benny quietly pulled Isaac aside. "Word of advice," Benny said. "Damon's got favorites. If you're not one of them, watch your back." By the end of the first day, Isaac was already exhausted and furious. The team was running on fumes. Morale was low, and yet there were people like Riley and Benny holding the place together. The next morning, things escalated. The morning rush hit hard, orders backed up, a table complained their eggs were cold. Another plate had to go back because of allergies, something that could have been dangerous. Damon stormed out of the office and pointed at Isaac. "You, new guy. You rang in that allergy ticket wrong, didn't you?" Isaac blinked. "No, I double-checked, don't talk back," Damon snapped. "That's a serious mistake, you could have gotten someone killed." "Wait," Riley said, stepping forward. "I was the one who took that table. Ian didn't even ring it in." "I did." And he actually caught the allergy note and flagged it to the kitchen. Damon turned to her, eyes narrowing. "Are you covering for him?" "No," Riley said, her voice steady. "I'm telling the truth." The entire staff had gone quiet. Isaac stood there, frozen. For a split second, he couldn't breathe. No one had ever taken the fall for him before. He wasn't used to it. He wasn't even sure what to say. Riley looked at him. "You okay?" He nodded slowly, still stunned. Damon scoffed. "Whatever. Both of you just get back to work." As people returned to their stations, Isaac quietly walked to the back cooler and leaned against the wall. His hands were shaking. He didn't care about the mistake. He cared that Damon had publicly blamed someone without knowing the facts. He cared that Riley had stepped in, risking her job for him. And he knew right then, something had to change. Isaac arrived just before dawn the next day, slipping quietly through the back entrance like he had the day before. He wasn't scheduled until mid-morning, but he wanted to see what happened before the doors opened. Who showed up early, who ran the prep. and how things were actually getting done. The kitchen lights were already on. In the back, Benny was chopping onions with a quiet rhythm, his sleeves rolled and his apron already stained. He didn't look up. "You always come in this early?" Isaac asked, keeping his voice low. Benny nodded once. "Someone's gotta prep." "Damon never schedules anyone before 6, says it's wasteful labor. Food don't prep itself." Isaac didn't respond. He just grabbed a second cutting board and started peeling potatoes alongside him. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the scrape of knives and the occasional hiss from the griddle as it heated. At 6:30, he heard the front door unlock. Riley's voice floated in. "Morning, Benny." "Morning, Ian." She looked tired, not just sleepy drained. Her eyes were red at the corners like she hadn't slept much. She didn't mention the incident from yesterday, and neither did Isaac, but when their eyes met, there was a flicker of understanding. They both remembered. By 8, the first wave of customers rolled in, mostly regulars, retirees and tradesmen grabbing breakfast before work. Riley handled the floor almost alone. The hostess hadn't shown again, and the other scheduled server, a guy named Tino, arrived 20 minutes late with no apology. Damon didn't come in until 9:15. He walked in sipping a takeout coffee from a different restaurant, sunglasses still on despite being indoors. He didn't acknowledge anyone as he passed, just disappeared into the back office and shut the door. Riley glanced toward the hallway. "He'll probably stay in there for hours," she muttered, grabbing a coffee pot. "Unless someone screws up." Isaac followed her to a booth where an elderly couple was waiting for their check. Riley apologized for the delay, then handed them their receipt with a free coffee coupon she pulled from her apron pocket. After they left, he asked, "Are you allowed to give those out?" She shrugged. "Not really. Damon keeps them locked in the drawer under the register, but I keep a few extras. Some of these folks come in 3 times a week. They deserve better than what they're getting." He didn't say anything, but he watched her pocket the empty coffee pot and head toward the back. A few minutes later, she returned with a plastic bag of ice wrapped in a napkin, holding it against her wrist. "What happened?" he asked. "Burnt myself on the carafe," she said casually. "It's fine." He stepped closer and saw the skin on her inner wrist already turning pink. "You should get that treated." "I will," she said. "When we're not short-staffed." It wasn't a complaint, it was a fact, and that's what made it land harder. Around 10:30, Damon finally emerged from the office. He didn't check the floor, he didn't ask about the prep or the orders. He walked straight to the kitchen where Benny was flipping bacon. "You didn't rotate the sausages in the walk-in," Damon said, holding a clipboard. Benny didn't look up. "I did. This morning, you can ask Ian." Damon turned. "Did you?" Isaac met his eyes. "Yeah, I pulled the older box forward." "Dated the new one." Damon stared at him for a second too long before saying, "Then next time make sure the label doesn't fall off. Health inspector comes in, we're the ones paying the fine." He turned and walked out. Benny exhaled through his nose and kept cooking. Isaac followed Damon to the back hallway near the office. "Can I ask you something?" he said. Damon didn't stop walking. "What?" "How do we handle when someone gets burned or hurt on shift?" Damon paused, turned around slowly. "Why?" Riley burned her wrist on the carafe. "Didn't see a first aid kit anywhere." "She's fine." "She knows where it is," Damon said flatly. "You don't need to worry about that. Focus on not making mistakes." Then he walked back into the office and shut the door. Isaac stood there for a moment, jaw tight, then turned back to the floor. Lunch rush was worse than breakfast. 2 bussers called out. Tino left halfway through his shift, saying he had a doctor's appointment. Riley worked 3 sections by herself. Isaac tried to help where he could, refilling drinks, clearing tables, running food. At one point, a teenage girl in a booth started crying because her milkshake came with almonds and she had a severe allergy. The menu clearly marked it. The ticket had a note, but the shake had still come out with crushed almonds on top. Riley saw it first and rushed over, apologizing and grabbing the glass before the girl could take a sip. Isaac watched her kneel beside the table, explain the mistake gently, and offer a fresh shake on the house. The girl's mother calmed down, but her hands were shaking. "I'll get the manager," Riley said, standing up. She walked toward the office. Isaac followed her. She knocked once. "Damon, we had a food allergy issue." No response. She knocked again, louder. "Damon, we need you on the floor." Still nothing. She turned to Isaac. "He's probably asleep." "He does that sometimes." Isaac blinked. "He falls asleep during shift hours." She nodded. "Usually after his second coffee. If no one's yelling, he doesn't care." Isaac stepped forward and tried the doorknob. Locked. "Do we have a key?" "Only he does," Riley said, "and the district manager." "But they never come down here." Isaac stared at the door for one long second. Then he turned back to the floor. They got through the rest of the rush without Damon ever reappearing. Riley remade the shake herself. Benny pushed out food orders faster than seemed physically possible. Isaac ran over 1,000 steps by the time the wave ended. At 3:15, Damon finally emerged, yawning and stretching. "What's the damage?" he asked Riley as she counted out her tips. "We had an allergy issue," she said. "Girl could have gone into shock." "You didn't answer the door." Damon waved a hand. "Handled now, though, right? No harm done." His indifference was so casual it didn't even register to him how close they'd come to a medical emergency. Isaac stepped in. "You understand how serious that was?" Damon turned. "You're not in charge here, Ian. Be careful how you talk to me." Isaac stared at him, saying nothing. Later, around 4, the shift finally wound down. Riley headed to the back to grab her backpack. Isaac followed. "Why do you stay?" he asked her. She sat on the bench, tying her shoes slowly. "Because I need rent. Because my sister's in nursing school and I promised I'd help. Because I like the customers. And because if I leave, it'll just get worse for everyone else." Isaac nodded once. Then something in her voice changed. "But I'm getting close. To quitting, to burning out." He didn't have a reply. She stood up, slung her backpack over her shoulder, and gave him a tired smile. "You're not bad, Ian. You might actually survive this place." She walked out. Isaac waited until the building was quiet, then walked to the front register, opened the drawer, and took one of the free coffee coupons Riley had mentioned. He flipped it over, scribbled something on the back, and slid it into his pocket. There was no way he was letting this go. Not anymore. The next morning, Isaac didn't go in through the back. He walked through the front doors at exactly 8 a.m., dressed in a crisp navy button-down, dark jeans, and polished boots. No apron. No name tag, no disguise. He'd left the glasses in his rental car. The weight vest was gone. His posture was straight, his face clean-shaven except for a sharp goatee, and his eyes were clear. Several heads turned. Riley, already working her third table, froze mid-sentence. Damon stood near the front counter with a laminated menu in his hand, talking to a new hire Isaac hadn't seen before. He looked up, confused at first, then narrowed his eyes. "Can I help you?" Isaac didn't answer. He just turned to Riley. "Could you ask the rest of the staff to meet in the dining area? I won't take much of their time." She stared at him for a second, then her eyes widened. She blinked once, nodded, and turned away without a word. Benny emerged from the kitchen a minute later, wiping his hands on a towel. Tino walked in from the back, confused and yawning, and the new hostess stood near the drink station. Riley stood against the counter with her arms crossed. Damon remained where he was, jaw tight. Isaac stepped forward and let the silence settle. "My name is Isaac Langston," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm the owner of this company. Some of you know me by reputation, most of you don't. I've spent the last 3 days working under the name Ian. I swept floors, cleared tables, and watched how this location runs without anyone knowing who I was." Damon's mouth opened slightly, then closed. Isaac didn't give him time. "I want to start by saying, Riley, thank you. You didn't have to say anything when I was accused of a mistake that wasn't mine, but you did. You put your job on the line for someone you thought was just another trainee. That's integrity. That's leadership." Riley didn't move. Her face was unreadable. Isaac turned to the rest of the group. "I also want to thank Benny. He shows up early, stays late, and keeps this kitchen running with no extra pay and no recognition. That ends today. He looked at Damon now, and then there's the other side of the truth. Damon straightened, trying to laugh it off. Okay, hold on a second. You show up pretending to be someone else, then throw accusations around. I don't think that's how transparency works. Isaac didn't blink. I don't think sleeping in your office during shift hours while your staff scrambles to prevent medical emergencies counts as leadership. A sharp breath escaped from someone near the back. You ignored multiple safety issues. You blamed employees without checking facts. You cut hours to save on labor, then vanished during peak times. You locked the first aid cabinet. You openly retaliated against people who didn't flatter you. He stepped closer, his voice never rising but every word slicing clean. You deny any of this. Damon opened his mouth, closed it. Then shrugged. You can't run a place like this without being tough. If I let every server do things their way, we'd sink. You think I'm harsh? Go ask any manager at a real restaurant. You're finished here, Isaac said, cutting him off. Clear out your things. Effective immediately. Damon's neck flushed red. You serious? Dead serious. I've been managing this store for over 2 years. And you'll be leaving it in worse condition than you found it. You're done. You don't speak to anyone else here. You pack your things and leave quietly. If you don't, I'll have security walk you out. The air in the room changed. Tension gave way to something heavier, relief, maybe. Riley stepped to the side to allow Damon past. He didn't look at anyone as he moved toward the office. The only sound was his footsteps on the tile. Isaac waited until the door closed behind him before turning back to the staff. I want to be clear. This isn't about punishing people to make a show. This is about protecting the people who keep this place alive. Starting today, things change. I'll be spending the next 2 weeks here personally, and we'll be bringing in a temporary manager from our Flagstaff location to take over while we find a permanent fit. Someone who knows how to support a team, not tear it down. He looked around the room. I'll be reviewing pay rates, hours, and workload distribution. If you've been asked to cover more than your share, I want to know. And if you've been staying quiet because you thought speaking up would cost you your job, speak up now. That culture ends today. Benny leaned against the edge of a booth. You ever plan to do this at the other stores? I already have. Not like this, but close. This one was the worst. It won't be any more. Tino raised his hand hesitantly. So, are we getting more people on the schedule? Yes. And you'll be getting proper shift coverage, especially during lunch and weekends. But I'll warn you right now, if anyone's been coasting while others pull the weight, that ends too. I'm not here to hand out favors. I'm here to build a team that works. Tino nodded slowly. Isaac turned to Riley. Can I speak with you privately? She followed him to a booth near the window. He slid a folded slip of paper across the table. She unfolded it. It was the coffee coupon she'd used 2 days earlier. On the back, in sharp ink, was a note. You shouldn't have to be the one holding this place up alone. She looked up. You didn't have to do that, she said quietly. You did the right thing when no one was watching. That's exactly who I want leading people. I'm not a manager, not yet, she blinked. You're serious. I want you to consider stepping into a leadership role, not tomorrow, not under pressure, but soon. When we've got the right support structure and when you've got the training and authority to do it right. You've already been doing the work. Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. What if I say no? Then I'll still make sure you're paid what you're worth and not pulling triple shifts, but I'd rather build around someone who knows what it means to show up. She didn't respond right away. The weight of the last few days sat heavy between them. Finally, she folded the slip and put it in her pocket. I'll think about it. Fair. They stood up. She returned to her side work. Isaac walked toward the back, passing the kitchen where Benny was already restocking the cooler. The atmosphere had shifted not into celebration, but something quieter. A sense that someone was finally listening. Damon's office door stood open now. His things were gone. The space was quiet. Isaac stepped inside, looked around once, then reached into the top drawer and pulled out the folder labeled HR forms. Inside were records, some incomplete, some outdated. He found Riley's file. No performance warnings, no complaints, no commendations either. She'd been invisible on paper. Just another name. He added a note to the front. Eligible for leadership development. Priority candidate. He closed the folder, locked the drawer, and turned off the light. It wasn't fixed yet, not even close, but it had started. 3 days had passed since Damon's removal. The air inside the Mesa location no longer carried the same weight, but it wasn't light either. It was cautious. Like everyone was waiting to see if the change would stick or if it was just another short-lived shakeup. Isaac had stayed, not in the office, not hovering or giving speeches. He rotated between roles, running food, helping with deliveries, checking walk-in inventory sheets. He asked questions, but more importantly, he waited for answers instead of filling in the blanks. He didn't want to lead with promises. He wanted to lead with proof. On Thursday, a woman in her early 40s arrived mid-morning with a clipboard and a rolled-up apron strapped to her bag. Her name was Carmen, the interim manager from the Flagstaff store. She was quiet, observant, and didn't introduce herself with a title. Instead, she walked the floor with Benny, asking about prep times and product waste. She asked Riley what portions were most returned. She asked the dishwasher if the machine had been serviced recently. No one had ever asked him that. By afternoon, Carmen pulled Isaac aside in the break room. "You've got a solid core here," she said. "But it's been starved, hours cut in the wrong places, no structure, no follow-through." Isaac nodded. "That's what I saw too." She glanced at the whiteboard schedule Damon had left behind. This was built to protect the manager, not support the staff. Every shift's overloaded at the wrong times. They sat down with a new week's schedule in front of them. Carmen laid out a staggered coverage system that redistributed hours without adding more than a few to the payroll. It meant some double shifts for her and Isaac to fill the gaps, but it gave the core team breathing room. By Friday, the changes started to show. The lunch rush still pushed them hard, but it no longer broke them. A part-time server from Flagstaff named Jody came down to help cover Saturdays. Isaac personally called 3 former employees who'd left in the last 6 months and offered them paid retraining if they were willing to return. 2 accepted. One of them, a tall, soft-spoken man named Marcus, had quit after Damon cut his hours and then accused him of stealing tips. There had never been proof, just a quiet removal. When Marcus walked in Saturday morning, Riley nearly dropped the tray she was carrying. She pulled him into a quick hug and said, "It's about time." Isaac watched from the counter. He didn't need to say anything. That afternoon, while Carmen handled a manager's log entry in the office, Isaac found Riley wiping down table 11. "You got a minute?" he asked. She nodded and followed him to the back patio, where the noise of the dining room faded into the rustle of wind through scrub trees. "I've been thinking about what you said," Riley said before he could speak. "About stepping up." Isaac kept his hands in his pockets. "And I'm not ready to run a whole store, but I could handle a floor lead position, a few shifts a week if I had backup." "You'd have it," he said. "Carmen's not going anywhere for a while, and I'll keep checking in personally, quietly." Riley looked out at the parking lot. "I don't want the title if it means doing 2 jobs on 1 paycheck." "It won't," she nodded. "Then yeah. I'll take it." Back inside, Carmen slid her a packet with the updated pay rate and expectations. It wasn't just a title, there were tools attached: training access, schedule input, and the authority to call a shift meeting when needed. Not symbolic, real. By Sunday evening, the team gathered in the dining room after close. They were sweaty, tired, and sore, but they weren't defeated. For once, the conversations weren't whispers of frustration. They were about what worked, what didn't, and what to try next. Isaac sat on the edge of a booth, listening. Benny said the new prep schedule saved him almost 30 minutes each morning. Tino, who had been late nearly every day before, had clocked in early twice this week. When asked why, he said, "Because I'm not dreading it anymore." Isaac raised his hands slightly, and the room quieted. "I didn't come here to fix things overnight," he said, "and I haven't. but I've seen enough to know this place can be stronger than it ever was. He looked at Marcus. You never should have been pushed out. That's on me for not being close enough to see how things were really going. Marcus nodded once. Appreciate you saying that. Isaac turned to Riley next. You've shown more leadership in 3 days than some managers do in 3 years. That's not luck, that's character. She didn't look away. Now we just have to keep it going. We will, Isaac said, but not by hoping, by checking, by showing up, by listening. He stood. One more thing, he added. If any of you ever feel like something's not right, whether it's hours, pay, treatment, safety, you don't have to go through a chain of command. You'll have my direct contact. Use it. Carmen handed each of them a card with a private email, not a generic HR address. Isaac's. No one said anything right away, but something shifted. A kind of collective breath released. Later that night, as everyone trickled out, Riley stopped at the door. You're not who I expected, she said. Isaac raised an eyebrow. Who did you expect? Another guy in a suit who takes notes and disappears. Most of them don't last past the first double shift. He smiled, but it didn't come from pride. It came from understanding. I've got plenty more in me. She nodded once, then left. Isaac stood alone in the quiet dining room, looking at the empty booths, the clean counters, the faint smell of fryer oil and coffee settling into the air. He'd seen the worst of it. But he hadn't walked away, and now neither would they.